cu Centrul pentru Studii Estice din Polonia. Sunt alături de Consiliul Științific pentru Centrul de Noi Strategii. Alături de mine avem o serie de invitați distinși pe care îi voi prezenta în curând. Aș dori să începem cu câteva elemente pe care să le agreăm, și anume intervențiile din partea vorbitorilor să fie limitate la 5-7 minute și apoi vom avea o serie de întrebări și răspunsuri și vom încheia discuțiile cu unele concluzii scurte în urma discuțiilor și discursurilor vorbitorilor. Înainte de a demara discuțiile, aș dori să vă recomand un studiu recent emis de Horia Ciurtin la Centrul pentru Strategii Noi, iernile nemulțumirilor noastre legate de reconstrucția Ucrainei. Chiar vă invit să îl parcurgeți dacă vă interesează acest subiect. Haideți să începem. Ei bine, nu sunt foarte apropiată de acest termen de reconstrucție, pentru că reconstrucția Ucrainei este mai mult de construcții civile sau alte construcții. Este legat de procesul transformațional prin care vedem că Ucraina trece acum ca stat care are o infrastructură care nu știm dacă va fi aceeași de dinainte de război, dar vedem că Ucraina este un membru complet transformat al comunității euroatlantice și ca societate modernă. Pornind de la aceste considerente, pentru că vin din mediul de afaceri, aș dori să spun că acest proiect este cel mai mare proiect de la cel de-al doilea război mondial încoace, dar trebuie să aibă un concept, părți interesate, gestiune de proiect, resurse și așa mai departe. Așadar, e nevoie să adresăm câteva întrebări la început, gândindu-ne la acest subiect al reconstrucției Ucrainei, gândind la nivelul de proiect. Întrebările la care mă gândesc sunt legate de reconstrucție în același timp cu războiul sau după încetarea acestuia și cine este proprietarul acestui proiect de reconstrucție la nivel mondial, la nivel regional și la nivel național. Este Ucraina singurul, unicul proprietar al acestui proces? Care sunt stakeholderii acestui proiect și cum vor lucra aceștia? Care este rolul în regiune? Spuneam mai devreme că am avut alături președintele Comitetului pentru servicii și industrie din România, care este rolul regiunii în procesul de reconstrucție al Ucrainei. Permiteți-mi așadar să vă prezint distinși invitați cu care sper că vom discuta pe marginea acestor aspecte și alături de dumneavoastră în sală la sesiunea de întrebări și răspunsuri mai târziu. Mă bucur să o prezint pe Alina INAYEH. Nu cred că are nevoie de foarte multe prezentări și nu voi trece prin CV-urile pe care le-au prezentate pe site-ul conferinței. Este consultant al președintelui fondului German Marshall. Doamna Jadwiga ROGOŞA este prezentă online la Centrul pentru Studii Estice în Europa.
CEO of Leviatan Design Romania and of Mr. Adrian, FLOREA Development and Digital Transformation Director for Concelex Romania. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian part is kind of missing. Mr. Rustem UMEROV, the chairman of State Property Fund of Ukraine, could not be able in the end to join our meeting, even if it was via conference. So very sadly disappointed about this. But we will try and talk about the reconstruction of Ukraine without a Ukrainian in the panel. So let's see how this goes. I would like to start by inviting Alina for her intervention. Alina.
Thank you, Alexandra, and thank you for coming to this panel. In order to circumvent the absence of the Ukrainian on the panel, what I would like to do, I would like to present what the West, the United West, is doing, should be doing when it comes to the reconstruction of Ukraine. And I'm coming to this from having just finished co-writing, co-authoring a report that is going to the June London conference, which is looking at exactly this, reconstruction of Ukraine, what mechanisms, what role for the West, what is there that we can do and needs to be done to start this reconstruction. In order to answer your question, the question of when, the answer is very simple. Now, reconstruction has to start now. Reconstruction has started already. Different people understand different things by reconstruction. However, there is at least rebuilding going on. But in order for the serious, large-scale, massive reconstruction to start, there are certain things that need to be done and need to be accomplished. And I will go through all of this without revealing too much of the report that German Marshall Fund will actually release next week. So it's a little bit of embargo until then. In order to start reconstruction, in order to have companies invest in Ukraine, in order to have governments invest in Ukraine, you need to have war insurance. The issue of war insurance is increasingly important, and that's something that people all over, I mean, on both sides of the Atlantic are looking at. It's easier said than done because insurance companies are not willing to take the risk. Governments are not willing to take the risk, yet somebody needs to share the risk with the companies that are going to invest in Ukraine. This is one of the issues that we recommend is going to be discussed, and is going to be discussed in the June conference in London. The second issue which is important when it comes to the reconstruction of Ukraine is that in some parts it's going to be rebuilt from zero, but it should be rebuilt better than it was before. At least when it comes to the issue of energy, it has to be rebuilt. It would be better be rebuilt according to the new standards, to the current standards of green energy, the Green Deal and everything, the net zero emissions and so on and so forth, which has or will have or could have the consequence of making Ukraine probably one of the most advanced country when it comes to green energy in European Union, or what is to be European Union a few years from now. The third thing which is important, and there is an increasing number of people looking at it, is the issue of accountability and transparency. We all know, and I will say it plainly, we all know that until the war, Ukraine was not the least corruption country in the world. On the contrary, the issue of corruption, still ongoing corruption, is still lingering. When all of this money that we are talking about, be it 380 billion or be it 600 billion, is going to be invested in Ukraine, by we I mean the West, want to make sure that the way they are being spent is transparent, the government is held accountable, and we know exactly where the money goes to and who's benefiting from them. Of course, it should be the Ukraine, the entire country. And then last but not least, and this is the most complicated issue, is, okay, but where does the money come from? Should we continue to put the burden on the European, respectively American taxpayer to finance Ukraine? We've been financing the war. Should we continue to put burdens so we finance the reconstruction of Ukraine? And if the answer is morally yes, then who is going to take this political risk? We see what's going on in the United States. So then the easier answer that some people have come up with is, we'll use the Russian assets. We froze the Russian assets. They're in the neighborhood of 300 billion. It is now time to seize the Russian assets and put them to work and invest them in Ukraine. Easier said than done. The international law does not allow, we've been looking at this from all angles, it's very complicated to circumvent, to bypass, or to bend the international law such that these assets are going to be seized. There are numerous ideas floating around, which is investing these assets and using the revenues, creating a claims commission, creating a trust fund. But all of these require A, unity, transatlantic unity, and B, require time. So the Russian assets will not be usable for the reconstruction of Ukraine in the immediate future. This is one of the myths we are trying to dismantle, to destroy in London. Thank you. So these are the challenges, and these are the opportunities that the reconstruction of Ukraine poses. The good news is that everybody is dedicated to finding solutions to this problem. The bad news is that the problems, as I've just presented them, are pretty complicated, and the solutions are not immediate. So political will still needs to be there in order to start reconstruction and continue with reconstruction.
Thank you, Alina. I think you've asked already, you've touched on a couple of points, and I'm sure we're going to go back to especially where the money comes from part. If it's not the Russian frozen asset, then what is it? Right now, I would like to continue our interventions to welcoming Ms. Jadwiga ROGOŻA. Jadwiga, you have a lot of experience. In fact, your expertise is on Ukraine. For many years, you have this is what you do know very, very well. So I'd like to thank you for being in the panel, and I would like to invite you to have your own intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I would like to welcome everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Because of some travel complications, I cannot be here in person, but I'm glad to be here. The intervention is very interesting. I would like to add a slightly broader perspective of the reconstruction. And to me, speaking reconstruction without saying that the war is still ongoing and the damage is being multiplied almost every day is kind of incomplete. So apart from repairing of the damage that the previous speaker mentioned, going on, energy sector structure, but apart from that, the very current perspective, speaking of a large-scale construction is very hard, because now we are even less certain than before when the war is going to end and how the war is going to end and what borders Ukraine will have. So these discussions are kind of hanging in the air a little bit. For the moment, the scale of damage is estimated at over $400 billion. Huge sum. Obviously, the eastern part of the country more affected by damage, destruction. But the assessments that the Ukrainian government makes for the reconstructions are even greater. It's been almost a year ago when Lugano conference took place, and then Ukraine presented its 10-year Ukraine National Recovery Plan, and it amounted at $750 billion. This is astronomous. And it was a very ambitious project, because reconstruction is not just reconstruction. It's, you know, this principle, build back better. So it's a thorough modernization of infrastructure, business climate, of energy sector. And it's a very ambitious but very general project at the moment. And I have to say, to compare by the funds that were allocated, for example, to European Union members, Poland, within 70 years under this EU cohesion policy, 2004 to 2021, received 130 billion euros. And Ukraine speaks of $750 billion. So you see how astronomous this amount is. Ukraine's priority is definitely this modernization. And in terms of is the structural independence from Russia, the aggressor state, implying, first of all, energy sector, but also trade and other sectors. It implies green transformation, transition to sustainable energy, energy efficiency of the economy, of infrastructure. And in this rebuilding and transformation project, Ukraine wants to be an active partner. It stresses innovation potential. It stresses also its ambition to be an equal partner in decision-making process concerning reconstruction, concerning financing of this process. And this is said both on the government level and on the level of activists, experts, NGOs. On the Ukrainian side, we also have this ambition to actively decide what kind of reconstruction, what kind of projects, and how the money is spent and issued. So it raises concerns on part of the donors because of the risk of appropriation of this fund. So mechanism is to be developed. Another mechanism that is to be developed is the coordination of efforts. We now have a very general idea that the European Commission will be a kind of a secretariat for the efforts on part of European Union and G7. But no details yet. And we still don't know whether the relating concrete projects or is going to be rather a recommendation body. So, you know, a year has passed and the details are still being. Another issue is that the previous speaker mentioned is where the funds are going to come from. Of course, the easiest thing to say is that from the frozen Russian assets. And we have the first decision. A week ago, American Attorney General has announced that they are transferring over $5 million from the assets of sanctioned Russian businessmen to Ukraine, Konstantin Malofeyev. So, and the State Department said that this is just the beginning, but you can hear that this sum is $5 million, and Ukraine requires several hundred billion. So it's just the beginning, and the question mark is huge. What we can see now, I think it's important to say that many countries already undertake their own projects and agreements with Ukraine on level of regions, on level of local governments, companies, NGOs, and other. And it looks like they are preparing for future reconstruction, but on bilateral basis. So if and when this coordination mechanism is created of European Commissions, it seems that many projects must be developed beyond it. So it's really hard to imagine that a comprehensive operation like reconstruction will be squeezed into just one coordination center. Rather, it's going to be continued just like the current assistance to Ukraine, financial and military and other, on very many levels, with very many actors, you know, state actors, businesses, municipalities, NGOs, physical persons, so individuals, and other. Last fact I want to mention, which is very important in transformation, successful transformation and reconstruction, is human capital. And Ukraine now faces demographic disaster because the population is shrinking because of refugees and because of casualties. Many people, very many people have and will have health issues, trauma, PTSD, different illnesses. So this is a serious problem we have to think about, including thinking about the communities of Ukrainian refugees that are in our countries. Whether we want to encourage them to stay in our countries or encourage them to return to Ukraine and rebuild it. Ukraine, which showed that it has a remarkable, resilient, active and innovative society that declares to be a part of European sphere of values and principles, that is very eager to transform its country and join the EU. It also is very severely affected by this war. So a lot of dilemmas, in fact, with very few concrete answers. That's my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Jadwiga. I personally appreciate your frankness, and although we haven't had such a good sound, I've noted down some of the points you were making, which, in my opinion, are extremely fair and pragmatic questions to ask. So what is the victory looking like? What are going to be the borders? There is a difference between financing of this process between 400 billion, which is what the World Bank is saying, and what Ukrainians are saying, 750 billion US dollars for the reconstruction. Who is going to be the owner? That's also something else you have said. The point on the human capital, I think it's very valuable. But also I allow myself to appreciate the fact that you're talking about the transformation process and reconstruction, so that we understand that it's much more than pouring money into reconstructing what was destroyed. So thank you for the intervention. I hope you will remain for the rest of the discussions. I now have the pleasure to invite Mr. FLOREA to, I'm sure what's going to be a very pragmatic intervention as well. Please.
Well, we're in construction business, so we have to. So, good morning, everybody. Slava Ukraini. Welcome to this panel. Powerful opener, Alexandra and Alina. I think one of the biggest questions is what's really meaning reconstruction of Ukraine, rebuilding Ukraine. It's such a large concept. Now, it's not novelty. The country is teared down. Infrastructure is grounded. Schools, hospitals, housing, everything is missing. So whenever we talk about that, we will need to see what is going to be done whenever the war ends or before, is what I heard. So whenever we see, let's start preparing for that. And imagine we talk about housing. Thousands of houses are missing, households are missing, hospitals. Kids have to go back to school. Heating has to go back to school. Then we go to roads and bridges, and later on airports. Companies that will be present on that market on an early stage, which actually are meant to accelerate the process. We have a duty somehow to these fellows Ukrainians, because they keep Russians away from the rest of Europe, to help them as fast as possible. So how do you get ready for that? Building all those things in a fast way. Well, learn more, I would say. How long would that take, and how much would that cost, you are saying, Alexandra? Well, Hamburg, which was bombed heavily in the Second World War, took 40 years to be rebuilt. 40 years, 40. West Berlin, the other half, we don't know the figures. 10 years, 500 billion US dollars, money at that time. So whenever we talk about Ukraine, 10, 20 years, we don't know what that is. Maybe with the new technologies that Alina was mentioning, will be faster, but the figure of $1 trillion that I heard already, we heard already several times, is not far. So how do you get prepared for that? Well, companies like the one I'm representing here today, Concelex, which is a civil constructor and infrastructure constructor, being present early in that market will actually help them. We won't go there for opportunities. It's not good to say that. We're not going to profit of the war. We go there to help these guys. Those communities that we need to come back as fast as possible to their normal lives. I think it's a duty to them. Now, to the format, because we talked about where the money will come from, how will that be spent, how transparent will be that? That's a tougher question. And I'll share with you a discussion that I had in Poland the other month. I was attending a Rebuild conference over there. They are doing it every now and then. And I had a chance to talk to a government agency from a Nordic country. It's not important. And the lady was saying, we're a small country, we'll be giving money. We'll be paying our moral duty to Ukraine. But we're not going to send money to their accounts and they will be playing with those money. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to pick one of the projects, and I have seen there 25 mayors, Bucha included, and Vinica included, Irpin included, having 300 projects in their hands saying, we can start tomorrow. We are going to choose one of those projects, and we are going to tender at home by the process we know, by the transparency we need. We are an European country that follows some principles, transparency included. So to the question, how will these guys doing? One of the answers is they will need to have a platform for transparency. They will need to allow construction company, as we are, to bid and exploit, in the right sense, the experience they have. We've been in the market for 30 years. We know how to do things. This is one of the companies that they need. That's one thing, for sure. So the government there, with the help of international organizations, should be, let's get ready for that moment. Let's have all these platforms in place. The mayors I have seen over there, they told me, some of them, we have built the presentations that we are showing you today, which are highly professional, by using candles and the batteries of laptops. This is the level they are today. I mean, I felt compassion. I need to. And they were saying, whenever we start, we will need as many as possible. Which leads me to another thing. Will they have $1 trillion or euros? No, they won't. Some of those money, I was talking to my colleagues in Concelex, we believe they will come through PPPs, public-private partnerships. Well, if you go invest your money, you will need transparency. And these guys have to be ready for that. I know that Alina and organizations like that will help them, but they will need to be ready like that. They will need to have platforms for coordination. They will need advisory boards. They will need working committees to make sure the money is spent well and transparent. They are not a monster of transparency. They are not a monster of anti-corruption, but they will be, and they have to be. Now, Mr. Nicu, the president of this conference, I would say, a National Strategy Center, said in the morning, we are here to find ideas, and I will dare to challenge a bit his invitation. He's here. So, what about New Strategy Center pushing for an idea that will say, because we're in war time, and because armies around the world do use reserves, otherwise they couldn't cope, what about building a bank of construction materials? Put it on the border. I heard in the morning we have the longest border to Ukraine. Pick a spot and put it there. Bring materials there, as many as they can. From simple cement to, I don't know what else. Iron, rebar, whatever it is. Bring it there. Put it in a free zone to make it more appealing. Bring one rail coming from Romania and another rail going to Ukraine. You know, we use different rail system, different gauges. So it's allowed to add to that. Bring that bank now. Whenever they will need to start, materials will be there. I have served in another country, rebuilding another country, I might say, and this was one of the challenges, from where I would take materials, not to mention inflation, that's another story. So what about bringing that and preparing for that? Alina was saying, let's get ready. And the more I think to the idea, and I will push that, we are among constructors. If you want to, we call it in Romanian, să fur startul, jump the gun in English. Design is the number one thing you have to do. What about building a hub? I heard the word hub from Prime Minister, from Mr. Ciolacu this morning. Let's build a hub for Romanian companies and American companies come over here. What about doing a hub of designers? If somebody would ask us to do a design in Ukraine, we have a design company in our group, the number one thing will be, what are the standards? I mean, designers will need to learn Russian/Ukrainian standards. So building a hub like that now, and teaching them, bringing Ukrainian experts, teaching them whatever it is, Cătălin will tell you more later probably, will actually make you stealing that start, getting ready in advance. That's one of the things that we'll do. I mean, if somebody will ask me, do you want to help? Yes. These guys, we have architects and designers that are young, and they are telling me, I would go, but I don't know where. Ukraine, you know, internet-wise, you cannot pick standards, despite the language barrier, and say, let me get ready. I mean, if we are on that path of paying this moral duty to a war, ex-war at that time zone, I think we need to get ready in time. Number one. Number two, governments on both sides, Ukrainians building transparency, and Romanian pushing up to the tax incentives. You want to go there and construct? Let me encourage you. We'll actually help Romanian companies and other companies, because we are not alone. Poland is just next door, to help these guys doing it faster. We are going about years, 10s, 20, I don't know, with a super advantage technology. they will be building energy grids, for instance, that will be green. So, coming back to your, you said pragmatic. I will start, making it now. Let's get ready. We're not looking at it as an opportunity. We're looking at it from another angle. And from that angle, we want to be faster there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I feel from the business hat point of view, I feel for you in the idea that what I hear you saying is potentially the reconstruction of Ukraine in reality for the country, for our country, can mean the relaunch or the reconstruction of Romania to be positioned as a competitive advantage here in the region. So it's an opportunity from this point of view. Thank you. Bună ziua, domnule Podaru. Vă invit să ne prezentați intervenția dumneavoastră. Știu că aveți un chart, dacă el poate fi pus și pe ecran. Mulțumesc.
Bună ziua tuturor! Mă bucur să fiu aici la acest panel și să fiu parte dintr-o discuție pe această temă. Eu aș vrea să încerc cel puțin să aduc o altă abordare. Și anume, în primul rând ar trebui să ne gândim că acest trilion, eu cred că va fi sub o formă sau alta, poate să însemne, în primul rând, ca România să nu reușească să absoarbă peste 20 de miliarde din PNR. Și de ce trebuie să discutăm? Pentru că acesta este riscul major pentru noi și unul foarte real. Pe de altă parte, dacă acționăm coerent și concret și pragmatic, eu cred că putem nu doar să absorbim acei bani pentru construcția României și dezvoltarea ei, dar companiile de construcție în România pot să ajute pe o parte, dar să și producă multă valoare în România, cel puțin gândindu-ne la facilitățile de producție pentru materiale de construcții, întrucât într-o zonă chiar și cu un conflict rece sau răcit, e clar că există riscuri mult mai mari. De aceea eu cred că, și o să încerc în scurtul timp pe care l-am, să punctez câteva aspecte cheie, o să încerc să răspund și să nu luați doar întrebări retorice, poate aș fi pus dacă eram în sală, dar aici cred că am venit să încercăm, din perspectiva noastră, să prezentăm câteva acțiuni concrete. Și acum, ca să încerc să răspund înainte să a trece pe lângă celelalte puncte, colegul Adrian, New Strategy deja a început să facă, asta este o discuție, nu este prima discuție, a început să facă pașii, cred că este printre puținele, dacă nu singurul ONG din România, care a început să facă acțiuni concrete în ce ține implicarea în Ucraina, pentru că e nevoie ca noi să acționăm azi și să punem în discuție și să punem în discuție, în primul rând, ce facem noi în România. Odată, ce facem noi ca firme de construcții, care sunt partenerii noștri, ONG-urile, care sunt partenerii, în primul rând, care sunt partenerii din Ucraina și apoi putem să discutăm și de aspectele cheie procedurale viitoare. Eu am participat anul trecut în Varșovia la o conferință organizată de un ONG american cu foarte multe companii din America și din Europa, dar și reprezentanții ai guvernului, NSPA, NATO. Și ce am observat acolo, că există deja bune practici pentru toți actorii raportat la zonele de conflict. Un alt aspect pe care aș vrea să-l subliniez a fost nu doar că există anumite lucruri specifice ce țin de lucru în zonele de conflict, riscuri de personal, de lipsa de infrastructură și așa mai departe, dar experiența zonelor de conflict din, să zic, din ultimii zeci de ani este un pic diferită de ce înseamnă Ucraina, pentru că dacă și aveam ca topic de discuție Irak și Afganistan, aici nu este așa. Ucraina are mare parte din riscurile de reconstrucție din alte părți, dar Ucraina are o administrație funcțională, poate nu perfectă, dar perfectă n-are nimeni pe nicăieri, și acest lucru trebuie luat în considerare dacă e să ne raportăm la acele bune practici. Am pus aici, că cineva mă spunea mai devreme, dacă ar trebui, ce ar trebui să facem. Eu cred că a participa în reconstrucția Ucrainei, mai ales ca vecini cu o graniță atât de mare, este și un aspect de moral imperativ, dar cred că este și o abordare pragmatică, pentru că ne dorim ca să avem o țară care să reînvie și să adere puternic la valorile europene, să fie un partener în frontul ăsta comun. Bun, aici am enumerat din câteva din riscurile specifice pe care le-am spus mai devreme. Eu ce aș propune, ca să existe mai multe grupuri de lucru în care să dezbatem concret ce trebuie să facă companiile azi. Am aflat că există țări care deja fac reconstrucție în Ucraina, cu riscul de a fi distruse, sunt acolo, fac reconstrucție, dar asta înseamnă, în primul rând, un lucru foarte important care l-am aflat la toți cei care au această experiență. În primul rând, cei care sunt acolo, finanțează reconstrucția școlilor, caselor și o fac azi, în primul rând stabilesc niște relații mult diferențiate, concreți și eu sper ca după acest panel să existe din ce în ce mai mulți actori, în primul rând din domeniul privat, pentru că ei trebuie să acționeze prima azi, și pentru a crea, să zic, motricitate. Guvernul este interesat, dar în acest moment, cu certitudine, focusul se pune pe ajutorul în timpul conflictului. În primul rând umanitar și, de ce nu, cum face Europa și Statele Unite, și militar pentru a duce la o încetare sau răcirea acestui conflict. Dar noi putem să participăm activ azi, cum fac toate țările care au experiență în zona asta. Deci cam asta aș vedea eu, niște acțiuni concrete cu toți acești parteneri implicați în acțiuni, atât din România, dar și cu partenerii internaționali. De asemenea, eu cred că, și aici fac un apel, pentru că am auzit această idee, să cumva să adresez și la risc, să nu pierdem cele de 20 de miliarde. Este clar că economia românească, în cazul unei finanțări, chiar și pe mai mulți ani, va suferi de prețuri crescute și chiar lipsă de materiale de construcții, lucru care se întâmplă și azi din alte motive. Actualizările de prețuri și eforturile guvernamentale nu vor putea ține pasul. Dar ce s-ar putea întâmpla, și aici poate o propunere, nu? Ar trebui să avem, poate, unități de producție realizate de companii românești care să aibă o preemțiune pentru proiectele din România și să poată să le susțină. Pentru că riscul ca să ducă către prețul cel mai mare sau unde e nevoia cea mai mare este unul major. Deci asta ar putea fi altă acțiune și eu cred că prin discuții cu guvernul, luând în calcul costul de oportunitate, lucrurile astea se pot întâmpla. Noi, ca și companie, încercăm cu pași mărunți, prin aceste colaborări, să stabilim parteneriate de încredere azi, să ajutăm în ONG-urile din Ucraina, astfel încât să înțelegem cât mai bine contextul, dar mai mult de atât încercăm să inițiem prin intermediul partenerilor strategici și aceste discuții pentru a răspunde la toate întrebările normale pentru un proces de achiziție, de construcții. Dar cred că toate acestea sunt și știu că sunt adresate și de bănci, cum vor putea finanța așa ceva, știu că sunt adresate și de actori guvernamentali, numai că pentru ca lucrurile să capete conturi, să se întâmple ceva, noi, fiecare în dreptul lui, trebuie să acționăm. Mulțumesc!
Mulțumesc pentru, într-adevăr, propuneri foarte concrete. Într-adevăr, există o diferență, adică dacă stăm să ne gândim foarte simplu, nu avem un benchmark. De la al doilea război mondial încoace, nu avem un benchmark pentru a trasa cadrul acestui proiect. Care sunt benchmark-urile noastre? Ori o soluție de tip plan Marshall sau ajutorul din teatrele recente de conflict, ori un approach, o abordare mai segmentată în sensul că fiecare țară poate să contribuie la un sector de activitate, la o geografie anume, vezi ideile Marea Britanie, Kiev, etc. Dar nu avem un benchmark și așa că important va fi, cum spuneți, care este procesul prin care se va aborda acest proiect mamut și, cum ziceam și la început împreună, care este ownership-ul? Este numai vorba despre Statele Unite și Europa, dar aliații de peste mări și cum ar fi Africa de Sud sau Australia, cum se pot implica aceste țări în viitor sau dacă sunt parte din stakeholderi? Alina, mai voiai să spui ceva, te rog.
I do. I want to make a few comments. This is unique and this is unprecedented. The Marshall Plan came with money. We don't have the money. Comparing the reconstruction of Ukraine with Iraq and Afghanistan doesn't quite hold water because that reconstruction was done when the war ended. What we are trying to do now is to reconstruct as the war, or at least prepare to reconstruct as the war is going on. So it has its uniqueness as well. And the reconstruction in both Iraq and Afghanistan worked hard by corruption on pretty much all of the sides. So this is why accountability on pretty much all of the sides is important in this endeavor. And then this cannot be done and won't be done by private actors alone. It has to be done by private actors, companies, together with governments, and together with international institutions. There is no other way. You can't have war insurances, you can't have coordination of everything that needs to be reconstructed without having all of these partners involved. It's not only European Union and the United States, Alexandra, is G7+, so Australia is part of this as well. There are more actors involved, or at least scratching their heads trying to figure out how to approach it. And last but not least, the difference in English, it makes sense, the difference between rebuilding and reconstruction. Rebuilding is putting buildings back. Reconstruction is actually going a step further and looking at reconstructing the infrastructure, energetic infrastructure, road infrastructure. It's more ample than just rebuilding, and this is why it's important to make this differentiation.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the panelists for their interventions. We still have a couple of more minutes. I would like to open the room for questions. I would like to invite people who want to ask questions to first say who they are. Thank you. Please.
Bună ziua! Mă numesc Valentin Bercă, sunt reprezentantul firmei de consultanță BRK Systems din Craiova. Firma este implicată în activități de consultanță pe coridoare de transport est-vest, mobilitate militară, geografie militară. Anul trecut și la începutul acestui an am avut niște colaborări cu Ministerul Apărării pe geografie militară. Am prezentat geografia militară a Ucrainei, rețeaua feroviară din Belarus, geografia militară Balcanii de Vest. Anul trecut, Comisia Europeană a lansat o nouă variantă a hărților TEN-T, luând în considerație proiectele mai vechi care existau pe coridoarele paneuropene, deci au reapărut coridoarele feroviare spre Ucraina, fiind legate cu rețeaua TEN-T, de asemenea un coridor feroviar spre Chișinău, de asemenea Balcanii de Vest au fost luați în considerație cu coridoare feroviare. În 2020-2021, în cadrul unui consorțiu pe care l-am realizat cu niște prieteni din Cernăuți, am lansat o propunere, un coridor feroviar nord-sud, foarte curajos. 2020-2021 era pace și prietenie peste tot. În 2020, prima variantă a fost Gdansk, Liov, Ivano-Frankivsk, Cernăuți, Suceava, Constanța, cu 600 de kilometri mai scurt decât Rail to Sea. În 2021, participând la Sofia, la forumul inițiativei celor 3 mări. Am venit cu o variantă nouă, Gdansk, Liov, Ivano-Frankivsk, Cernăuți, Suceava, Bulgaria, Grecia, Alexandropolis, cu legături spre Adriatică prin Macedonia de Nord și Albania. Ceea ce ne-ar interesa pe noi ar fi legătura cu Cernăuțiu, deci ne-am putea implica în reproiectarea coridorului feroviar trecându-l pe normele europene. Am înțeles că deja au fost niște discuții. Polonia ar putea contribui pe partea Liov, Ivano-Frankivsk, deci Cernăuți, Bucovina de Nord, Ivano-Frankivsk, Transcarpatia. Am văzut cu toți cât de important este transportul feroviar. Am văzut cu toții ce înseamnă o blocare a Mării Negre și atunci cred că ar trebui să analizăm și să vedem cum ne putem implica. De asemenea, fac cunoscut faptul că cea mai mare fabrică de locomotive din Ucraina, Lugansku, a fost distrusă, tot ce a fost acolo a fost dus în Rusia, toate țările baltice, Belarusul au fost aprovizionate cu locomotive de acolo. Poate ne-am putea implica și în domeniul ăsta. Mulțumesc!
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Piotr Marczuk. I'm representing Honeywell, gold partner of this conference. For your interventions, really kind of inspirational and insightful, though we are still with question marks after all these statements of yours. You mentioned that Marshall Plan came with funds. Well, I'm reading that funds were actually not the main and most important element of the Marshall Plan, that indeed the transparency elements, the governance elements, which were not related to one country but to a bunch of Western European countries, were actually even more important, that were helping in, let's say, putting the money where the real need is, with a proper governance and with a proper transparency. So I guess this mindset can be easily applied in the Ukrainian case, with the small caveat that, yeah, we still have the war going on and nobody knows when it will finish. Yeah, I think the more important, still question mark that is there is who will be the owner. You've mentioned that as well. I would like to connect this question, who will be the owner, with the idea that Adrian brought up to build hubs for different, let's say, types of activities. The one that can be touched immediately is the warehouse with construction materials. The one that is probably not so easy to touch is, for example, financial hub. There could be countries, like neighboring countries to Ukraine, where such financial hubs could be established because the governance and transparency there is at the right level. I would say not necessarily everything has to be located in Germany, France, or London. So maybe the talent hub, the financial hub, the design hub, this kind of hub-type approach could be implemented to address the needs in a coordinated way. Yeah, from the perspective of my company, and I actually heard literally parallel statements from the Ukrainian ambassador Markarova in DC a month ago. The key areas that are somehow need to be addressed immediately would be building, would be energy sector, would be logistics, including transport stuff, and obviously would be defense, because we are living in such circumstances. So maybe also topical list of let's say areas which need to be addressed first, and those who need to be addressed in a second let's say, stage. It would be also helping in somehow focusing the minds of international community to do kind of simplistic prioritization of the needs. Thank you.
Thank you, very, very useful. I'm mindful of the time and I would like to draw to a conclusion by thanking our panelists, including Mr. ROGOΖA, and also for the good interventions here. It is clear that, to me at least, that this is why such conferences are useful, because you can see from this topic that there are many more questions than answered at this point in time, and that is probably simply for the reason that we have never had a war and the reconstruction process in the same time in our known history, therefore we don't have a pattern. But that's why this kind of events are useful, because ideas, as we have seen from our distinguished panelists and from the room, are useful. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you, panelists. Have a good afternoon.